tell me a little bit about the Gators.
So I had a little issue in my district a couple years ago with a constituent who had a bunch of pet alligators and did not contain them properly. And as they were getting too large, he was just letting them go out the back door. And his property abutted a creek that ran into the Kiskiminetas River. And so we had an issue with people kayaking in the river. It's a big recreation river, and having alligators swim up to their kayaks.
You've entered the smoke-filled room, where we cut through the haze of Harrisburg politics and get to examine the laws and lawmakers that really drive the discussion.
Representative Abby Major, thank you so much for joining us today. Tell me about Armstrong County and what it was like growing up there.
Armstrong County is a rural county, a lot of small towns on the river, farming community. In the past, a lot of industry.
What kind of industry?
So in Ford City, where I grew up, we had PPG and Elger, which was a toilet factory. So that's like all of our grandparents worked there, and but that industry left in the 90s. And so we have, a lot of abandoned industrial issues there, and with a lot of our communities with shrinking population and lack of jobs like that. So, but Armstrong County, wonderful place, great place for recreation, biking, boating, trails. We love our outdoors and hunting.
And gators, apparently. Yeah.
We'd like them to be contained.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. So what was it like growing up there? I'm sure you said a lot of that industry left in the 90s.
Yeah.
It was a lot different growing up from what it is now.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, it was, I think, a traditional American experience. Your parents kicked you out of the house in the morning, and you came back when the street lights came on, and we rode our bicycles around town and went to the superette and bought penny candy and things like that. Very wholesome, very
Yeah.
wholesome. And I do think we still have that there, and that's one thing I really love about my district and our community is that it still has a very prominent small town vibe where everybody knows each other. Everybody knows what everybody's doing, good and bad. And, you get that little gossip in the small towns. But I love that because everybody is just there for each other when they need it. And it's something that's really lacking in bigger communities, I think.
So you represent two counties, correct?
I do. I represent Armstrong and Westmoreland. I represent most of the population of Armstrong County. Representative Bashline I jokingly say Representative Bashline represents the cows and I represent the people. So he actually, I think, has more land mass in Armstrong County than I do, but I have more of the population. And then I represent a very small portion of the northern edge of Westmoreland County.
What did your parents do growing up?
My dad was a social worker, so he worked for, children and youth services for most of my childhood. And then as he got older, he worked with adults with intellectual disabilities and like group homes and things like that. My mom was a seamstress and worked in a sewing factory in Katanning, which doesn't exist anymore, but she loved to sew and taught me how to sew when I was young also, but good working class people.
So how do you think your childhood differed? You just told me you had a daughter just graduate high school. How do you think your childhood differed from hers?
Well, I will say I've been very blessed. I've been working very hard to create a better life for my daughter, even though I had two parents and I'm a single mother. So that has been different for her. But I grew up with nothing. We were very paycheck to paycheck, sometimes no paycheck when I was growing up. And my daughter hasn't had to feel that struggle the way that I did when I was younger. Also, times are different with the internet and the way things are now. Like, you can't get away with the stuff we got away with when we were kids, but everybody's recording everything you do these days.
That they are, including this, a great podcast. So after you graduated high school, you decided to join the service. Why?
Yeah, so as soon as I finished high school, I did one semester at community college. Like I said, we had no money growing up, and I didn't know really what I wanted to do, and I didn't want to put myself in a lot of debt at the time because I knew I didn't have that kind of financial support to go to school and get a degree. Even though at that time that was, you had to get a degree. That was what they told us. I'm 40, so that was like the early 2000s. And if you didn't have a degree, then you were going to be like a loser, right? So, but again, I couldn't afford that, so I joined the military. There was also, I felt like that was the beginning of like the opioid epidemic among my age group, and a lot of my friends at the time were starting to dabble in that, and that wasn't something that I was interested in doing. So I felt like the military was a good way to like kind of remove myself, give myself a better opportunity, and then ultimately I knew could help me go to school later, which it did.
So is Armstrong County still facing that a lot more than most places in Pennsylvania?
I don't know the specific statistics on that, but yeah, I mean, it's a rural community. We still obviously struggle with drug issues, opioids, meth, all the fun stuff, I guess. And it's a struggle. So I've lost a lot of friends, a lot of people I went to high school with to the opioid epidemic, or they're in prison for it, so that was something I'm grateful now that I made that conscious decision to remove myself from.
And you definitely went pretty far. So you did a tour, a year-long tour in
Yeah, I was in Iraq.
Iraq, okay.
Yeah, I was just outside of Baghdad in 2005 and 6.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
Tell me about that experience.
When I joined the Army, I joined as an intelligence analyst. So my experience in Iraq was a lot of studying. So I would every day look through all the incidents that happened that day in our area of operations, and pick out hot spots, like areas that were more dangerous than others. I would get reports about, targets in the region, and then I would have to brief our command and explain to them like, hey, maybe we should take this route tonight when we would do because I worked for a supply unit, so we would travel around all over the city of Baghdad and supply other units with fuel or ammunition or food or anything that they needed. So we did a lot of traveling through dangerous areas. So my job was to make sure that they knew where to be extra cautious and pick routes that, they wouldn't expect us to go, or they wouldn't be waiting for an ambush or things like that. So that's what I did every night, because we did all of our missions overnight. Every night for a year, did that. I didn't lose any soldiers.
Culture shock was that for you being there?
I was just talking the other day with Representative Metzger about this, and when you're young and you're that age, I think you don't realize the gravity of the situation that you're in. I turned 21 over there, and I think a lot about what my friends were doing when they were turning 21 and what I was doing when I was turning 21, and the amount of responsibility that I had, and it was totally lost on me. And now that I'm older, it's been over 20 years since I did that, and I just think all the time about how many lives that I was responsible for, and how I just didn't even really grasp that at the time. So the culture shock, I mean, it's like a different planet over there. Like when you're just talking about being out in that world and seeing these different cultures and the different people, and it feels like you're on a different planet, like super far away. But I actually really enjoyed getting to learn that culture. I did spend a lot of time with locals, again, gathering intelligence and trying to find out what was happening out in the city. But I'll tell you what, when I remember the first time when I came home, and I flew into Pennsylvania, and everything was so green. And that was the most shocking thing to me, because everything out there is really brown.
So how much different was it from what you thought it was going to be? Did they do a good job preparing you for what you were getting into?
Yeah, I think we were prepared. Although I went in pretty early in the war, so I guess I haven't really talked about this, but when I was studying to be an intelligence analyst and to deploy, we were still studying like Russian Cold War tactics. And so then we got thrown into this situation with, insurgents, terrorists, where they're not using war tactics, where they're shooting, they're setting up their troops, on the high ground. Like, that's not how it works when you're doing like guerrilla warfare. So there was definitely like a learning curve with that I wasn't prepared for. I do remember being shocked by how some of the people were living there. I remember when we were traveling through Baghdad, there were like junkyards or like dumps, trash dumps, and there were like houses built out of trash in the trash dumps, and people were living in there. So it's just shocking, and I don't think that was a symptom of war. I think that was just normal for some of those people. But then you go up the street and there's giant mansions and, like Saddam Hussein's palace, and all of that's right there in the city.
What was the biggest lesson that you learned from that experience?
Wow. The power of teamwork and responsibility, and taking my biggest lesson that I really learned from the military, and I tell people all the time, is like the personal responsibility for your own life and taking charge. And that's always what I've done. And you can't rely on other people to take care of you. But sometimes when you're in a team, you have to, right? So, but taking care of yourself.
So after you get out of the military then, what did you do?
So after I got out of the military, I got married, and my husband was still in the military, and we had our daughter, and we traveled around. I lived in Germany for a couple years. I lived in Texas for a few more years. And then ultimately I decided to come home because my family was home in Armstrong County, and I had my daughter, and I wanted my parents. I wanted my parents to get that opportunity. I'm an only child. My daughter's an only child, and my parents really wanted to be a part of my daughter's life, and so I made that happen.
So you eventually ended up working for your predecessor, Representative Jeff Pyle.
Yes.
How did that end up happening?
So my plan was, again, I had joined the Army because I really wanted to go to college. So my plan was, when I moved home, my parents were going to help me with my daughter, and because my husband and I had got divorced at this time. And I wanted to just go back to school. So I was going to use the GI Bill, go back to school. My parents were going to help me. And I was actually was working part-time driving a tow truck. So that was what I was doing, and I was going back to school. And I ran into my predecessor, Jeff Pyle, who had been my teacher in high school. And had got me my first political internship when I was 15 years old with my predecessor before Jeff Pyle, Jeff Coleman. So that was how I got started in politics. But I actually ran into him, Jeff Pyle, at Sheetz, and he said, I really need someone to come work for me in my office. And I was like, I'm going to school. Like, this is what I want to do. I'm going to school. And he said, I don't care, we'll figure it out. So I came and worked in his office, and I scaled as much of my schooling back as I could to online. So I would do it in the office when I had free time, or he would let me leave work to go to class when I had to go to class, which I really appreciated. So it took me a little bit longer, but it was nice to have that steady income also.
Everybody says that Representative Pyle was an absolute character. Whenever I ask, I wasn't around for him, but that seems to be the word that everybody uses the most, is he is a character.
Yeah.
Do you have any good stories about him?
Oh my gosh, I have a million stories. I don't know if any of them are appropriate for the podcast. But no, Jeff was a great person. He really cared about the community. I always tell people that I learned a lot from Jeff Pyle, both what to do and what not to do. But no, he was a good person. He really did care. I'd say, he passed away a couple years ago, and I stay in touch with his wife and his kids, and they're wonderful. They're like family to me. But Jeff, yeah, he was a character, that's for sure. So I guess it was just one of those things like you had to know him, you know?
Yeah. So I know working in a district office can be rough.
Yeah.
Usually when people go to their state representative, it's not for a good reason to tell
Right.
you that you're doing a great job or that they're very happy with PennDOT. But with that comes very rewarding experiences as well. What's some of the most rewarding work that you did in the DO?
Actually, the one thing that I would point to, and the thing that first came to mind when you mentioned it, was just it was towards the end of working in the district office before I was elected, but during COVID, I talked to hundreds and hundreds of people about their unemployment. And that was like such an issue for people because they were put out of work, they were put out of work and they didn't have any income and they were relying on unemployment. They were told that they would get unemployment. And then our unemployment system was so backed up that people were not getting their unemployment checks for 3 months. I don't know how many people can go 3 to 6 months without a paycheck. And here we're telling you, not only you can't work, and also we're not going to give you this money that we promised you. So I really feel like that was one of the things that I did that I feel like actually made a difference for people in their life, because I helped them actually get that money so that they could pay their bills.
What did you learn about the constituents that you then went on to represent later on?
Working in the district office was so valuable, I think, to being a legislator, because you do know what matters to people. You get to learn what really matters to people, what upsets them the most. And I think people just really, they want to know that you care about the community. They want to know that the community is important to you, that you're considering the community when you're in a Harrisburg and legislating. And I think that's always been important to me, party stuff aside, right? Some of these things, the party doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's like, are you putting your district, are you putting your community first? And so that's, I have learned a lot of things about a lot of people working in the district office, and I just try to remember who they are and where I came from and how the things that I'm doing affects them.
So you touched on this a little bit briefly about how you were going to school. You were going to school for mortuary science and funeral services.
Yes.
Where did that interest come from?
Okay, well, this actually goes back to my military service because, well, I guess I'll tell you the story. So I worked a lot overnight because I would have to compile reports and read through what happened during the day and stuff. So it was easier for me to work overnight, and then I would do my briefings in the morning, kind of like at the end of my shift. So my office when we were deployed was right next to our mortuary affairs officer. His name was Sergeant First Class Poole. I'll never forget. And his job was to process any remains, and by that I mean like do the paperwork. If a soldier was killed, or if a soldier killed a civilian, we would also have a lot of paperwork to do with that also. And he was one person, and as you can imagine, sometimes a job like that would take more than one person. And so he was given a list of young soldiers that were told that they had to come help him when he called. And some people can't handle that kind of work, right? So Sergeant Poole came to me one day and he said, Roop, that's my maiden name, I need you to come just help me real quick with something. And I was like, all right, fine. It was like the middle of the night. I came back and...
Did you do so a little bit, a little uneasy in that? Or?
Actually, I remember at the time I was kind of just like,
Whatever.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea. Like, I've never seen anything like that before. And so I helped him. We just had to move some remains. There was a soldier from another unit, and then a few, Iraqi civilians, and we moved them and did the paperwork, and clean them up, and then we would return the Iraqis back to the Iraqi police, and then the soldiers would get sent up to the airport to be shipped home. And so he asked me to come help him, and I went and helped him, and he kind of made a joke like, oh, you didn't even throw up or cry. So so he started just asking me to come help him. And so I did that for most of the year with him. And when I got out of the military and I was thinking, like, what am I going to use my GI Bill for to go to school? I thought, well, like I already kind of know that I can handle this. It's a trade. I wanted to learn a trade. And so I was like, maybe I'll do that. So that's what I went to school for. The military paid for me to go to school. I'm a licensed funeral director. I am a licensed funeral director at a funeral home still to this day, although I'm not really doing much work there. I am still technically able to at Curran Schaefer Funeral Homes in Apollo.
And you were working there part-time then while working for Representative Pyle, correct?
Yeah, so I had to do my internship there. So because the funeral industry does require an internship with a funeral director. So I did my internship there. And I learned everything I could. I tried to absorb everything I could. And then I did work there part-time for a while, just helping out when they needed somebody. That's a job that's like on call. So I would just, do a weekend on call here and there as they needed me or show up until, once I ran for office. And then they got a new guy there, Matt. He's great. And he kind of took over a lot of the stuff I used to do.
So Representative Pyle then announces his retirement in 2021. And you were then elected to replace him 2 months after that announcement.
Yeah.
Tell me about what I'm assuming was an absolute whirlwind of 2 months.
Yeah. So during COVID, obviously that was also an election year in 2020. That was an election year. And Jeff was up for election. During that time, he suffered a stroke, and it was debilitating. He ended up being in a wheelchair, and there was hope at the time that he would recover from that eventually. And so when the election was over and 2021 started, and I think he started to realize that he couldn't travel. He couldn't do the traveling. Like COVID was actually beneficial to him because that instituted like the remote session policy, and he was still able to participate as a legislator from home because many of the legislators were doing everything remotely. So he was still able to do that. But when 2021 rolled around and he realized that he couldn't really do the traveling anymore, he couldn't do the trips to Harrisburg, and he reached out to me, and him and I had a lot of discussions about it, but he was like, I think I'm going to retire. Like, I don't think it's fair to me to continue to do the job if I can't show up. And he was not doing well. So he wanted to spend that time with his family and focus on his recovery. And so he asked me to run, and I did. But yes, it was very quick. It was very rapid. It was kind of one day he just decided that he was going to do it, and then it just happened. So I think it was like from the time I decided that I was going to run until I was elected, like on election day, I think it was like 8 weeks. And then a couple of weeks later, I was sworn in. So it was very stressful.
Was it more of a culture shock doing that than what it was when you went to Baghdad?
I will say no, and that's just because I worked for him for so many years, and especially the last year when he was ill, I sat in on a lot of like committee meetings and stuff for him, and took notes for him, and did a lot of that. So in a way, I felt really prepared more than probably most of the legislators who come out here for the first time, just because I already knew a lot of the staff out here. I already had been and watched and seen committee meetings in session, and been doing that for many years at that point.
So what has shocked you the most then, since going from a staffer to a legislator? What was the biggest wake-up call that you had?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just the internal drama. Sometimes this place feels like high school, but
I hear that a lot.
Yeah, so I think a lot of grown adults, bickering over dumb stuff.
Yeah.
So
you made a lot of headlines on this year when you co-sponsored legislation to legalize marijuana in Pennsylvania. And in your Trib Live op-ed that you wrote shortly after, you said that you were just as surprised as everybody else that you were doing this. Tell me about the journey that led you to doing that.
Yeah, so it kind of started It kind of started they approached me. They wanted to create bipartisan language that Republicans and Democrats could get behind to legalize adult use cannabis. A lot of states already have legalized. We already have medical. I mean, I would argue that cannabis is already legal in Pennsylvania. It just costs you $100 to get a medical card, and then you can go to the dispensary and buy it. I mean, that's really it. But, you know, when you think about that, and then you think about if you've been to a vape shop in anywhere in Pennsylvania and you walk in, you can buy THC products, which are technically not cannabis, but they're cannabis. Or in some of these places, they're straight up just selling you cannabis and telling you it's
Really?
hemp. Okay. So yeah.
Well, tell me real quick, what is the difference then, just for people who aren't familiar with it? There's the THC or Delta 8, THC 0 or whatever it is. What is the difference between that and marijuana and how that ended up becoming legalized?
Yeah. So what we think of when we talk about cannabis, okay, that is like processed hemp, and it's specifically, it's a strain that's specifically made, and that's what we think of as cannabis. It's intoxicating, etc. So they've created these other, but it was very narrowly defined, okay? And part of that was because of industrial hemp. So the federal government said, well, we want to carve out this very specific definition of what is marijuana so that we don't hurt the industrial hemp industry, okay? Because that's a real industry, right? But however, when they did that, they left a huge loophole there for hemp, where any hemp products essentially become legal. Now, what they did with the hemp products is they are doing basically like Breaking Bad type crap, spraying chemicals on them and making them intoxicating. It's just they're doing different strains.
I just want to, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just want to defend my boy Walter White here for a second. You're making it sound like he's like some kind of, he just wanted to make the best product possible, okay? He wasn't doing anything too shady.
Yes. So that's when you're in your Sunoco and you see like Delta 8 or, you know, whatever number they have now, or THCA. All THCA is raw hemp. So you turn THCA into THC, which is the intoxicating product in marijuana, by lighting it on fire. So legally they can sell you THCA, and all you have to do is burn it to get high.
Which you'd be doing regardless.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of this legal loophole. And I think people don't realize that it's essentially legal here already. And the problem is those products that you're getting in the vape shops or in your Sunoco, because I'm like, the Sunoco 2 blocks from my house sells THCA products, right? So those are still intoxicating hemp products. Like, they get you high the same way that medical cannabis gets you high, except for they're untested, unregulated. You have no idea what kind of dosage is in there. They're using fake certificate of authenticities to sell it to you. And when we have purchased and tested these products, overwhelmingly, they are full of pesticides, heavy metals, all sorts of mold and mildew and yeast and things that you don't want to be inhaling.
I read in your op-ed that you said at one point there was fentanyl found.
So there was a story out of Montgomery County of fentanyl being found in some of these products that were purchased at a vape shop. Yes. Gotcha. So, and I have had constituents reach out to me. I have had constituents bring me products from, I have a whole bag of random things in my office here to take to be tested.
Okay.
One girl told me that she had a seizure after something she got at a vape shop. And the dosage of the things that they are giving away for free in these vape shops is ridiculous. So if you, just to give you an example, if you have a medical card and you go to a medical dispensary and you want to get some gummies, okay, which we don't sell gummies in Pennsylvania, but like you get troches, that's what they're called in Pennsylvania. They're like cough drops. On average, a troche has like 10 milligrams of THC in it, okay?
So that's like the recommended dosage.
Yeah, that's like a normal average dose, 10 milligrams. And
for an adult, I'm assuming.
For an adult, yeah. And if you go in some of these vape shops, they're giving away for free gummies that have 1,000 milligrams per gummy. And then people take them, they're unsuspecting. They went in to buy, and a lot of these people that go in there aren't there to buy intoxicating products. They want to buy vape juice or some kind of, nicotine product.
Yeah.
And the guys at the counter are like, do you want to try one of these gummies? Like, they want to show you that maybe you like them and then you'll come back and buy them. So they're giving them 1,000 milligrams, like people who have potentially never used cannabis products before. And yeah, I've heard stories of them having seizures, having to go to the hospital. I've had multiple issues also in my district specifically with them because they're not checking IDs because they don't have to because it's completely unregulated. They're selling them to children. And they look like candies, like some of these products. They say, the package, it looks like a pack of Skittles, and it says Skittles with a Z on the end.
Where are these products coming from?
Anywhere. I mean, a lot of them come from China. So they're being imported, and we have no idea where the hemp products are coming from. And again, like I said, when it's tested, it's full of all kinds of nasty stuff. So... anyway, all of that to go back to say.
So what is a bridge then from that to let's legalize marijuana?
Yeah. So I guess where I'm coming from on that is when you are talking about how do we end that issue, right? The problem is that people are still buying this stuff, right? And they're already getting it. If they're not getting it with a medical card, they're going to buy it there. And if we take the stuff out of the gas stations, which we should regardless, they're driving over the border. Every state surrounding us has legal cannabis at this point, except for West Virginia. And some people don't want to get a medical card because that puts them in a weird situation with their Second Amendment rights, right? So I guess my point with coming to it is, one, I want to make sure that people are doing it, they have access to safe products. We have seen studies that show that there is a medical use here, right? So I want to make sure that people have access for medical reasons also. But again, people are doing it anyway. I think when you legalize, you won't see an increase in number of people using it because the people who want to use it are already doing it, right? There may be some people who are waiting for it to be legal. I think that number is very, very small, and they may try it once. I don't think they're going to become chronic users, but people who
Good use of the word chronic.
people who are already using,
Yeah.
one of the complaints I hear is, well, I already smell cannabis smoke everywhere. I already smell it. Okay, well, it's illegal technically. So you think that's going to get worse when it's legal? I just don't.
And you smell cigarette smoke everywhere too.
Right. And obviously we have a revenue problem here. We just saw with this budget impasse where the revenue is just an added bonus to me. But right now, all of our tax money is going to the states around us who are selling it. People people in Philadelphia just drive across the bridge and go to Jersey and buy whatever they want.
Or they're buying dangerous Chinese products.
Correct.
That are completely unregulated.
Yes, correct.
So you touched on this as well, the weird situation that this puts you in if you get a medical card, or even if you buy these illegal THC 8 or Delta 8 products at gas stations or vape shops. That still puts you in a weird position with your Second Amendment rights, as marijuana is still classified as a Schedule I drug. And under federal law, individuals with medical marijuana cards are prohibited from purchasing or possessing firearms despite these state laws that have legalized them. For a long time, there have been discussions of reclassifying marijuana to a Schedule III, which essentially allows for medical use. But now just more recently, we saw in Congress, they are looking at just a total hemp ban. What do you think, what are your thoughts on this? What do you think is the solution here federally?
Yeah, so what I will say about the hemp ban is that is actually a good thing, because what that hemp ban specifically addresses is closing that loophole that I was talking about earlier. So that's not, I feel like that is being marketed as like this like they're doubling down on making cannabis illegal, but that's not what it's doing. It's really closing that loophole. I think it's a step in the right direction towards rescheduling.
Okay.
So I am still hopeful that it will be rescheduled federally. I think that changes the entire conversation here in Pennsylvania. As far as the Second Amendment stuff, that's also another reason why I agreed to sign on this bill, right? You can't ask for changes. You can't ask for legislation to be done a certain way if you're not willing to vote yes in the end. That's how I feel. Like I will be a yes on cannabis, but what I am asking for in exchange for my yes is some public health and safety issues. I want to make sure that, well, I haven't done a great job on the revenue end because, you know, it's very difficult to convince Democrats how they should spend their money. But
And everybody else's money for that matter.
yeah, exactly. So, but I was able to get some Second Amendment protection language into the bill. And, you know, I also want to make sure that we are giving small businesses opportunities to get involved in the cannabis space. So one of the things that I asked for in the language was the ability for small businesses, instead of letting the multi-state operators that run all of our medical program, our bill allows them to keep the current dispensaries that they have, but not open any new ones. So
Okay.
the dispensaries that they currently have would be able to sell adult use cannabis and medical cannabis. But any new dispensaries that would open would be small businesses or social equity applicants. And social equity applicants includes veterans, women, you know, trying to give other people the opportunity to get involved in this space. So again, I want to make sure, I think that legalizing adult use cannabis is inevitable. I think if you talk to anybody, they will agree that it's going to happen. It's just when. So I'm coming from a place of making sure I'm putting my name on it and I'm saying, okay, we're going to do this someday. Let's do it safely, responsibly, and let's give other people opportunity.
So do you think those who use marijuana, either medically or recreationally, should be able to legally own and possess firearms?
Yes. I think everybody should be able to legally own and possess firearms. I'm the chair of the Second Amendment Caucus, so that's something that's very important to me. Armstrong County, that I represent, has the 4th highest number in the entire country of registered gun owners, and that's only the ones that are registered.
That's awesome.
So definitely number 1 in Pennsylvania, but number 4 in the entire country, which I think is amazing. I would say that that's the number 1 issue in my district, is the Second Amendment. We love our guns. And so it's important to me that, especially, you know, when you're talking about medical cannabis, people are using that so that they're not using opioids, right? We obviously have an opioid crisis in this country. And if cannabis can help people get off opioids or avoid opioids in the first place, like I would rather have someone with a gun that is on cannabis than on fentanyl, right? So I guess that's where I'm coming from. I mean, I'm sure you know people who use cannabis, they're not usually, you know, doing anything crazy with a gun.
I'll tell you one thing. It is wild that I've seen very dangerous people who are drunk around guns. But anytime I see somebody who is under the influence of cannabis around guns, they're usually just like, it's never an issue.
Yeah.
There's like, I'm not picking that up right now.
Right.
It's usually they just want to sit on the couch and hang out
Yeah.
and watch a movie, right?
Yeah.
So tell me how you ended up becoming then the chairwoman of the Second Amendment Caucus.
So my predecessor, Jeff Powell, used to be the chair of the Second Amendment Caucus also. And I think, you know, part of that is because I represent Armstrong County and we're well known for being the gun capital of Pennsylvania. I'm proud of that. And so when the opportunity arose, when the caucus was going to be without a chair, I was, again, they were like, hey, why don't you do it? Jeff did it. And, you know, it's easy for me. I know it's not easy for everybody in our caucus to take such a strong position on the Second Amendment, but it's easy for me because of where I do represent. So I'm happy to do that and happy to fight for our Second Amendment rights.
I don't know about you. I am what the kids consider a Second Amendment extremist.
Okay.
That's what I typically say. So we actually, just in September, the Democrats were trying to push through I think it was 4 gun control bills with their 1-vote majority. Those being a prohibition on 3D printed guns, a requirement for background checks on sales for rifles, private sale of rifles, which right now, we can get into that later, red flag laws, and then also a bill which supposedly put a ban on Glock switches, but it's not exactly what that did, and we'll get into that a little bit. Now, the Democrat Party, all 3 of those 4 bills ended up failing. Thankfully, the one that did make it through is going to die in the Senate. What does it say to you, considering the fact that Democrats are pretty much forced by their leadership to vote as a bloc, that topic ended up breaking Democrats, and Democrats ended up voting against these bills?
So what I'll say is that a lot of these bills are based on feelings, right? If you look at the actual numbers and the studies about what these bills would have prevented, it's like next to no crime would have been affected by any of these bills passing, okay? These are opportunities for them to say that, they are trying to stop crime and mass shootings and stuff, but like criminals don't buy guns the proper way, okay? The only people that these bills affect are law-abiding citizens who are purchasing guns properly.
Who are trying to protect themselves against those criminals that are not following these laws.
Correct. So the Democrats have one member who votes yes on the Second Amendment because his district requires him to. He has a very strong pro-Second Amendment district, and they would never vote for a Democrat except for one that voted on Second Amendment, correctly on Second Amendment issues. And so he accidentally flubbed it up earlier this year and voted with the Democrats on a procedural vote to kill constitutional carry. I don't know if he wasn't paying attention or if he thought he could get away with that, but everybody noticed. The Second Amendment community noticed that he voted against constitutional carry, okay? And so, in my opinion, I guess I'll give you that caveat. In my opinion, the efforts to run all of these bills, which, by the way, they just ran another a gun control registry bill that would keep track of every gun that every citizen purchases and what guns you have in your house. They just did that last week, so I'm expecting to see that one. Yeah, I'm expecting to see that one come up soon, although it's not on the calendar for today. This was some attempt to allow him to be the hero who voted no and, killed these gun bills. So I think they knew exactly how those votes were going to go.
Really?
I think it was an effort to give him that cover because, it's a 1-seat majority. They can't lose them. And they'll let him kill all the gun bills if that means they keep their power and their majority.
So you never see votes come up that the Democrats lose because they know the counts beforehand. This has pretty much been the only case where that was.
And they knew the count beforehand.
Do you think that they knew beforehand?
They 100% knew beforehand. So I know that he told them that he was going to vote no.
Yeah.
And they may have thought that they would get a Republican, but as far as I know, no Republican told them that they were going to do that. Okay. So I do believe that was a little bit of what we like to call political theater.
Gotcha. So, and either way, with Democrats even voting that way, even if they knew the count ahead of time, what do you think that says about the way Pennsylvanians still value their Second Amendment rights when all these surrounding states are not necessarily doing the same?
Yeah, I mean, as the Second Amendment caucus chair, I hear all the time about the Second Amendment. And even, I'll be honest, in Armstrong County, I know that I'm speaking as a representative of Armstrong County, which is maybe not representative of the entire Commonwealth, but even my Democrats are gun owners. It's very important to them. I hear sometimes from Democrats, well, if Democrats started buying guns, then you guys would be voting. I'm like, no, every Democrat should own a gun. Like, that's how I feel.
I've introduced 3 of my Democrat friends to guns.
Yeah. I'm like, do you guys want to go shooting? Yeah. Like, I'll take you out to Grace's. Like, we can buy you a gun. I have offered that service to every Democrat in the House. And you would be surprised how many Democrats carry guns. So many
when you
of
live
them
in
do.
Philadelphia, you kind of have to.
Correct, correct. Many of them do, but they still come up here and vote against them, which, hey, you know what? Whatever, I guess, if that helps you sleep at night.
And maybe instead of worrying about our law-abiding citizens in our districts who, are following the law, maybe they should actually enforce the rules that are on the books in their crime-ridden cities. And
yeah, I mean, look at the
be such
crime
an
rate
issue.
in Armstrong County, right? We have the most guns in the entire Commonwealth. I wonder what our crime rate is in
If
comparison.
guns were the issue, it. There would be no question about it.
Yeah, it's a pretty safe place to be, I say. So.
All right, so I'll leave this one fairly open-ended. What types of changes would you like to see with Pennsylvania firearm laws?
Well, obviously, I would love to see us pass something like constitutional carry and get that done. I know it's hard with, mixed legislature with Democrats in the majority, Democrats as governor. I don't see that happening. So right now, my priority as the Second Amendment caucus chair is to maintain the status quo. I think that's the best thing that I can hope for and I can do. And, when bills come up and we kill them on the floor, then I feel pretty good about that. I feel pretty good about killing bills from the minority. Not an easy thing to do, but, I'm up to between last session and this session, I think I've killed 6 or 7 bills now. So, I'll take it. I'll take that as a win.
Well, like I said, as what the kids call a Second Amendment extremist and gun owner myself, on behalf of all gun owners, I'd like to thank you for
working hard.
your hard work at protecting our Second Amendment rights, and also for joining us today on the Smoke-Filled Room. Representative Abby Major, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.